hours in every zone, and still they kept up with the clicks. Now shoppers ask more from the websites they're on, their language, their currency, their way, or they're gone, so you'd better keep up with the clicks. All of a sudden, there are so many must-dos if you want to keep selling, like delivery there, no there, or there.
And make it tomorrow. First thing.
No time for borders. Gotta stay in control to stay in the flow and continue to grow. But we'll help you. Keep up with the clicks.
Η αθηναϊκή ζυθοποιία αλλάζει τα δεδομένα στην καλλιέργεια της γης στη χώρα μας και συμβάλλει στην ενίσχυση της βιώσιμης γεωργίας, δίνοντας τη δυνατότητα στους παραγωγούς να πάρουν το μέλλον της οδιάς στα χέρια τους. Το πρόγραμμα Έξυπνη Σπορά είναι ένα νέο καινοτόμο πρόγραμμα ευφυούς γεωργίας που αξιοποιεί τη τεχνολογία στην υπηρεσία της ελληνικής πρωτογενούς παραγωγής. Μέσα από τη συνεργασία με το Γεωπονικό Πανεπιστήμιο Αθηνών και με τη χρήση της πιο σύγχρονης τεχνολογίας, δημιουργούμε μια καινοτόμο πλατφόρμα με έξυπνες υπηρεσίες προς όφελος των αγροτών, εστιάζοντας με προτεραιότητα στους παραγωγούς συνεργάτες της αθηναϊκής ζυθοποιίας που ξεπερνούν τους 2.000 σε όλη την Ελλάδα.
Δεν υπάρχει καμία εξειδικευμένη υπηρεσία μέχρι τώρα για το κρυθάρι που θα έχει δεδομένα για το κρυθάρι το ίδιο και εξειδικευμένους αλγορίθμους για την παραγωγή και την εξέλιξη καλλιέργειας.
Η έξυπνη σπορά είναι μια σπορά για το μέλλον. Έρχεται να χτίσει πάνω στο πρόγραμμα συμβολιακής καλλιέργειας, το οποίο ξεκινήσαμε σαν αθηναϊκή ζυθοποιία 16 χρόνια πριν, τα τελευταία 13 με τη συμβολή του Γεωπονικού Πανεπιστημίου Αθηνών και το οποίο έχει φτάσει να απορροφά το 20% της συνολικής καλλιέργειας κρυθαριού στην Ελλάδα, κάνοντας έτσι πράξη το όραμά μας για μπύρες της αθηναϊκής ζυθοποιίας που ξεκινάνε από το χωράφι και καταλήγουν στο ποτήρι των Ελλήνων καταναλωτών.
Το χρονοδιάγραμμα του προγράμματος είναι 17 μήνες με φάσεις συλλογής δεδομένων, ανάλυσής τους και εφαρμογής των αποτελεσμάτων στις καλλιέργειες.
Έχουμε προηγούμενη εμπειρία που σημαίνει θα βγει σε μορφή που μπορεί να το χρησιμοποιήσει ο παραγωγός ακριβώς όπως εκτιμούμε τον Νοέμβριο που ξεκινάμε
Mesdames, Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen,
Κυρίες και κύριοι,
I don't know any other languages for ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I hope you've enjoyed. Actually, I do find the coffee here extremely good. That's a genuine comment. This session is investing in ESG education and its benefits. ESG is one of those annoying acronyms, or initials, not really an acronym. Environment, social, and governance. And some people believe in it with a passion, others have their doubts, but we are privileged to have some extremely good speakers here. Prince Pavlos, who is a member of the Board of Directors of the School of Foreign Service, Georgetown University. Peter Mara, the Dean of the Earth Commons, also from Georgetown University in the States. Areti Roditi, manager of the European Investment Fund, the EIF, and the EIB Group. And Julien Beaumont, partner in Change for Good. Lady and gentlemen, welcome. Prince Pavlos, I think the floor is yours. And as you know, I'm very dictatorial. It says here you've got 4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay.
Now, Peter Mara, I don't know why, according to my thing, he's got 5 minutes. So
He's much better educated.
I'm not sure why there's this distinction, but there we go.
Yeah, I don't
Areti, there's no minutes by you. I mean, you can go on for hours, but don't. I mean, 5 minutes I think would be perfect. And Julien, 5 minutes. Anyway, Prince Pavlos, the floor is yours. Or from here, wherever you want to go.
John, thank you very much. The reason I'm here today is because I'm a father of 5 children, and about 10 years ago, I realized that my children were going to university and moving into the next part of their life, going into the working world. And I realized that the environment is one of the main things that everybody's concerned about. I'm a former student of Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. I've now been asked to join their board. But I met Peter Mara earlier this year, but I'd heard about his program, which is an environmental program that is also looking to do work in Greece. And my focus has been much more towards Greece in the last few years. And my passion is how to bring youth and education to people and what they can do with it going forward. And I've discovered through meeting the European Investment Fund that they have an incredible program that invests in the environment. And then through that program, I hope to bring families and their offspring and young people through these systems to learn more about the companies they invest in and how to invest in the environment. I've worked in 30 years now in the investment world, in the hedge fund community, and it wasn't easy to get into the environmental programs because they basically didn't make any money. Nowadays, though, they do, and people like Julien has discovered ways to invest and make good returns for people. And so I come back to the idea of education. I think, having studied at the School of Foreign Service, I think democracy and open economics are the three main pillars that can help people move forward. If you have a democratic system, people will normally guide them towards the good. If you have an open economy, that means that entrepreneurs come through. In this last, I'd say 10, 15 years, entrepreneurship and environment have actually come together. And I've seen that through the different people who are coming through this education programs and investing programs. And so I thought that having these three members here, European Investment Fund, a member of the investing program and the educational program, was a terrific way to invigorate young people and help them to come into the education of the environment. Our future is the environment. We had a panel here before talking about the islands in Greece and small communities. If the small communities can't stay and grow, we will lose everybody to the big cities where environmental issues are much worse. So if we can get young people to go and stay in these environmentally kind zones, it'll be better off. I think the internet has helped that a lot. And therefore people have been able to stay at home or work from other areas that are not traditional offices. When I grew up, people were expected to become a doctor, a lawyer, or a banker. That has changed, and thank God for that, because we have got young minds out there that are doing wonderful things. I'll be soon handing over to Peter, who is going to show you how young people can do wonderful things through his educational program. And then Julian and Areti will tell you how the investment programs they have can help that. I think I've come under my time, and I hope I've done a good job, because I know Areti has to speak for more than I have.
I'm very grateful. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here, Prince Pavlos. When you first invited me, I was thinking, well, why are you inviting me to a session on economists? I'm definitely not an economist. In fact, I'm an ornithologist. I've studied birds for most of my career at the Smithsonian Institution. And while I was there, what I was doing was basically documenting the sixth mass extinction. I was watching and quantifying the decline of biodiversity all around the world. And what occurred to me during that process was that the position I was in, I could not do anything I really needed to do to stop the decline of biodiversity, or stop climate change, or stop any of the major environmental problems that we were seeing. And because the drivers were too big. These macro drivers that we're seeing are just way too extreme. And that my interest lied in the long-term fixes. And in my opinion, those long-term fixes are educational systems, and creating educational systems that can actually put people into place, missionaries around education, to actually correct these problems in the short term and in the long term. So I was recruited by Georgetown University to come and build something around the environment. And what was clear was that we needed a school for environment and sustainability that was not thinking about the past 20 years and how we were doing environmental education and sustainability education, but thinking about what we needed in the next 10 to 20 to 30 to 50 years and to be in place. And so I jumped at the chance, and I've since become the dean of the Earth Commons, which is basically a nascent school for the environment that will become a school in the next few years in Washington, D.C. But I think of this school as a constellation of sites, not just with a campus in D.C., but with campuses throughout the world. And that is because we are pushing our definition of interdisciplinary in multiple ways. Because as we think about our environmental problems and solving our environmental problems, we have to really be interdisciplinary, not in the ways we've done in the past, but much more aggressively as we think about this into the future. So our economists really need to understand the science. They absolutely need to understand the science. Our biologists need to understand the business. Our biologists and our scientists or chemists need to understand the international affairs issues. We need to be multi-fluent in all of these different languages. So as we build this new school for the environment, we're actually building interdisciplinarity into the very fabric of everything we're doing. We're building joint faculty appointments that are in the School for Foreign Service or in the School for Business at Georgetown or also have appointments in the Earth Commons School. We're also building global perspectives because global perspectives are also essential in everything that we're doing. So we're building, our first site will be in Greece. And so we've been working in Greece for the past 2 years, really imagining what that looks like, thinking about who the partners might be. So we're planning to build an MOU out with the University of Athens, perhaps the University of Crete, building scholarship exchanges, not just with our faculty and building those collaborations, but also with our students, not just Georgetown students, but also Greek students. And building these collaborations in ways that are really embedded, they're on equal footing in many ways. We're also building out experiential learning opportunities. Right now, you can pick up your phone and you can learn almost anything you want to learn that you would get in a typical classroom. When we think about the education for the future, we need to be thinking about immersive experiences, experiential experiences, more than we've done in the past. And of course, this has happened in the past, but we need to amp it up. So students, when they come out and they're going into the job market, and you nailed it when you were talking about doctors and lawyers, et cetera, that has been the vision of the future. It's like, and that's because people like to avoid uncertainty. But as we think about placing people into the new burgeoning job markets around environmental issues, we're just now defining what those jobs are going to be. So we're asking students to take a little bit of a leap of faith into this new market, into this new economy of jobs, and actually trying to figure out what they're going to be doing. So we need to set them up in various ways, and that will happen through these experiential immersions that they will be getting through their 4 years of education. Whether it's in Greece, it's in Jakarta, it's in Doha, or it's in Buenos Aires. We need to be thinking about it from that international perspective. So I'm very excited to be able to thinking about this new day of how we teach environmental and sustainability type topics into our educational systems, but we have to be thinking about that in a deep, deep way as we think about the next generation and what they need to deal with and what we've left them with, because it's a mess.
That's a great message. Now, before I turn to Julien, I mean, it seems to me that, especially in the States where education, university education is incredibly expensive, the pressure is always to go for STEM subjects. And you're actually arguing for something which is not STEM at all. Well, it can involve STEM, but it's not. So, I mean, who are you going to appeal to? Just in terms of the people you want to be educated on biodiversity, the environment in general.
So I firmly believe that we need to also help students find their passions. And those passions may not be around STEM topics. They may not be around environmental science. It may be around environmental justice. It may be around environmental governance, which could be policy, law, or government type topics. And so it's our job to actually build out the science pieces, the justice pieces, the governance pieces, and the culture pieces, because it may be around environmental communications, which frankly is just as essential as the parts in the science. So it's not only an engineering problem, there's often a communications problem around environmental issues. So our job has gotten a lot harder. It's much more diverse, but we need to step up to this challenge and create the educational system.
You've got to persuade people not to be just lawyers and doctors and so on.
That's right. That's right.
And also they don't actually have to be scientists to go into something like this.
Exactly. Julien.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. And before diving into my remarks, I'd like to thank Prince Pavlos for inviting me to this event. Thanks a lot. We don't know each other for a long time, but your vision about the global sustainability challenges, and especially those faced by Greece, are truly inspiring, so thanks for inviting me. And now let me briefly introduce Shift for Good and our vision of the Greek ecosystem from a venture capital, international venture capital fund. So in a nutshell, we are the world's largest venture capital fund dedicated to decarbonizing the transportation sector. That basically means that our mission is to transform the way we move people and goods, making it more efficient and more energy conscious. This means investing in all types of transportation, but primarily in road and maritime, and across many different sectors such as AI, alternative energy, alternative propulsion technologies, battery, alternative fuels, and so on. We are focused on investing in scale-up companies, primarily in Europe. And what sets us apart, beyond our sector focus, is that we are an impact fund. We only invest in companies that are designed to create a positive environmental impact. And it's important to highlight here that we make no compromise on when it comes to financial performance. We have extremely ambitious targets, both in terms of environmental impact, but also in terms of financial returns. And that's probably one of the only way to achieve systemic change from our viewpoint. Now, in each region we operate in, there are specific dynamics. And Greece holds a very strategic importance for us, not only, but primarily because of its weight within the maritime space, and especially in the shipping industry. And like in many other industries, large shipping companies are traditionally slow to adopt new technologies, okay? And but we are witnessing currently a shift driven partly by the emergence of new leaders, new generations that are not only more attuned of the environmental challenges, but also very well aware of the business opportunities they present. Driven by very strict environmental regulations, innovation will play, from our viewpoint, a key role, a pivotal role in the transformation of the maritime sector, and all the segments of the industry will be impacted, and not only the ships themselves, but also port infrastructure, logistics, energy production, and so on. And interestingly, despite Greece's leadership in the shipping industry, its maritime startup ecosystem is still nascent, and we see a gap here between the country's historical predominance in this space and the current state of its maritime innovation. And I'm 100% confident that this will change in the short term, because we see a growing ambition among Greek entrepreneurs to make something meaningful from here in the country, and together with world-class universities and a growing local VC scene, I'm convinced that all the ingredients are already there. So it's more about making all the talents and resources converging together that should position Greece as a natural leader in the transformation, the upcoming transformation of the maritime sector. I hope in this it's the early days of a very fascinating evolution of the industry, and I hope we'll be able to contribute at our level to this transformation forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Arati, EIB.
Καλημέρα σε όλους.
Good morning. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm Areti Roditi, and I work in the EIF, which is a member of the European Investment Bank.
English, in order to be in alignment with the rest of the panel. I will start with a few words about the EIF. We are, as I mentioned, we are part of the EIB group. We are a specialist provider of risk finance for small and medium enterprises and small mid-caps across Europe. We provide financial instruments, guarantees. We invest in equity capital with the ultimate benefit of supporting small and medium enterprises in Europe. I will provide today a brief overview of how the EIF is applying ESG principles. The EIF is committed to promote environmental, social, and governance standards. It applies an ESG framework which consists of the EIB environmental and social policy, and as well as the ESG principles that are applicable to the EIF. These principles apply both at the level of the mandate and the products, as well as on a transaction-by-transaction basis. As an EU body with an EU mission, in order to fulfill our mission, we are working on the basis of thematic interventions. Actually, we are in a transition. We are moving from a volumes-based organization to an impact-driven organization. We focus on specific thematics, and the environment and social impact are part of this thematic. So it's a major priority for us, investments in environment. So we apply also ESG standards at the level of transactions. We evaluate to which extent our financial intermediaries have adequate policies, ESG policies, and to which extent they include ESG considerations in their investment decisions. And we do that on the basis of an ESG questionnaire addressed to these financial intermediaries, where we evaluate their ESG policies. We evaluate to which extent they include the ESG considerations in their decision making, and their monitoring and reporting frameworks. We also assess the climate risk, to which extent this is taken into consideration in the decision-making process, and the outcome of this assessment is part of an internal score, which is included as part of the proposal to our governing bodies for decision. It goes without saying that we request a lot, we put in place compliance with law provisions in our contracts. We request financial intermediaries to report on ESG risk factors and reporting, and of course we take that into consideration in order to further improve our own policies. For us, the future is green. As I said, we seek to increase our environmental and social impact, and we are trying to increase the share of investments that we are supporting that have an impact, a positive impact on the environment and society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. A quick question to Areti, because you have all this ESG requirements in your lending. But I think it was Andreas or maybe Daron Acemoglu, I think Andreas, said that the number of companies that had ESG formats in their makeup was actually declining. Have you found this?
Well, for us, we are not directly contracting. We are acting through financial intermediaries.
Yes.
So we are evaluating
and you evaluate people who claim to be meeting the ESG.
Yes.
I mean, so the demand is there. Whether the supply is actually going down or not, or the demand is going, yeah. Okay, I'm with you there. But which is, if you take the E, the S, and the G, I mean, Peter was very good on the E, but how do you distinguish between these three? Environment, social, environment is pretty easy to grasp. Social,
it's one of our policy goals.
Well, what does it mean?
skills, education, support gender equality, integrity and inclusion, support, for instance, I would mention investments in social housing,
which is a sort of
social impact.
But that's the sort of thing, surely, that is much more easily carried out by a big company than by the small and medium enterprises that you were talking about before.
If I could interject here, one of the primary reasons why I've tried to get this group together is precisely because educating people from an early stage goes away from this structure that we've had, that you have to do this and big companies have to be responsible and this. No. We break it up, we start all over again with these guys. Young people come in, they learn about everything in education, but there's a focus on sustainability and these programs. So when they come out into the world, they are now prepared to use these skills to help us here innovate our companies to a new way of thinking. And so I think we need to sort of look forward and not backwards. And Andreas was right. If companies are not keeping up with what they should be doing, then somebody should be pointing the finger at them, because the youth is coming in, and they should listen to those people coming in, but also having the education of how to know to be useful in that environment.
Actually, corporate reputation really does matter to younger workforces, absolutely, Peter, if you look at biodiversity, every headline I see seems to say that the diversity is diminishing. You always hear about the loss of this or loss of that. I mean, this is a bit, I mean, we're in Greece, it's a bit like Sisyphus, you're trying desperately to get to something and it rolls back.
Yeah. I try to remain an optimist when it comes to biodiversity, because when we look back in history, we have lots of reasons to be optimistic. In the United States, we had multiple species that were being impacted by a chemical called DDT. So we almost lost species like the bald eagle that you might be familiar with, the peregrine falcon. There are a whole suite of species we almost lost. There was a book written about it, Environmental Communications, was very effective, by a woman by the name of Rachel Carson.
Indeed.
And the book was called Silent Spring. It changed our environmental futures temporarily in the United States, and we created agencies, federal agencies, like the Environmental Protection Agency. So science went directly to policy, and immediately we also created something called the Endangered Species Act in the United States, which started protecting species directly. And so there are regulations, not voluntary regulations, which I think are an important distinction when we start to think about ESG, and certainly in the United States and the EU, and how many of these things are voluntary versus regulated, but that's a different story. So what I'm going to say is that DDT was eliminated, and none of those species went extinct. And so despite the fact that we see these massive declines of species around the world, not just birds, we see it in mammals, we see it in reptiles and amphibians, we see it in a variety of things, nature is resilient. That is the main message. Nature is resilient. And we are part of nature. And the degree to which we want to continue to make choices that allow these species to slip, we're basically making the same choice for ourselves, that we are continuing to slip. And it's not us. It's future generations. It's our legacy that we're leaving to this planet.
I mean,
it's a conscious decision.
You make a very, very good argument. But I mean, you did recently have a president who emasculated the EPA.
John, do we really want to go there? It's quite the sensitive topic, and it could be a lot worse in just 25 days.
Indeed.
So yeah, I'm not about to even come close to defending that individual.
Right.
So, and he will emasculate NOAA, which is our national marine system. It would be disastrous.
Sorry. No. Questions from the audience, please, because this is a very, very good topic indeed. Lady there. And the microphone should be on its way to you. If you put your hand up again, so that, there we go.
Thank you very much. I think now I'm in a different position, and I'm really happy that I think that I can put you in the corner a little bit, because speaking from a private sector perspective is the following. The private sector has been under sort of pressure to align, let's say, with the ESG standards and to include ESG within the strategy, as we said before. Energy transition, social, governance aspect. There's a huge scarcity of sustainability experts. And I must say that one's to blame is the educational institutions, to be really honest. So the question here is that we cannot actually achieve all these targets, all right? We cannot, let's say, respond to this pressure if we don't have sustainability experts coming from the educational systems. And it's not only the environment. It's the human rights, it's the governance side, it's the accounting, it's the ESG investment, it's the sustainable finance. So what we haven't seen from a private perspective is these people coming out of this university. So I'm asking you now from Georgetown University, what is your goals, your new curriculum, your strategy in order to address this? Thank you.
Yeah, and that wasn't a planted question. She's right on target, 100%. That's exactly right. There is a massive dearth of sustainability experts. In fact, when you look at most companies that have decided to take the leap and appoint a chief sustainability officer, CSOs, it's sort of a new emerging thing, and you ask these folks, well, where did you get your education? They don't have a place where they went. We didn't have the curriculum in place to train people like we have for economists. In fact, we have economists in business schools, we have economists in departments of economy, we have economics, we've trained them. And environment is broadly that we have that problem. Many schools don't have schools for the environment. How crazy is that? And so we have to have schools for the environment. We have to have curriculum to train sustainability experts. And so the first degree I created at Georgetown University is a joint degree with the School of Business around, it's a Master's of Science in Sustainability Management. Because of that reason, how do you do carbon accounting? How do you look at your ecological footprint? How do you sort of take a perspective on this from a finance perspective? How does this influence insurance? I mean, these are fundamental questions and integrations that we have to have in place that people need to be able to articulate no matter what their perspective. Business, finance, and sustainability in organizations, no matter what they are, have to have access to people that have this knowledge. And it's the job of the universities to put them in place. And that's exactly why I took this job. It's exactly, I've been doing it for 5 years. It's exactly why we're trying to do this. You nailed it. Thank you.
Well, it's a very good answer, but if I can question Julian and Arati, I mean, if I go on a British Airways flight, for example, there'll be a survey afterwards asking me, you know, how they're doing on sustainability or whatever. And I think this is virtue signaling by British Airways. Are they really doing anything about sustainability? I suspect only if regulations change.
You mean our company?
Yes. I mean, if you're, you know, venture capital or whatever you're doing, I mean, how do you tell whether someone is actually walking the walk as well as talking the talk?
Well, that's actually for us a kind of a legal obligation, because we have this mandate towards our investor to invest only in companies that are impact-driven companies. Yeah. And of course, we measure. Prior to the investment, we measure we give an ESG score, but on top of that, we are an impact fund, meaning that you can be a tobacco producer with a good ESG score, right? Because it's how you build the product. And then in impact investing, it's the impact of the product itself. Will your product be able to save or to reduce the carbon footprint of existing solutions? So that's how we do it. We are kind of obliged to define impact indicators prior to the investment, and then throughout the holding period, the moment we are an active shareholder of the company, we track, we monitor those KPIs, and at exit, we conduct an external audit. And interestingly, I haven't mentioned that in my presentation, but our performance fee is not only based on the financial performance of the fund, it's also based on the environmental performance of the fund. So it's basically half of our performance fee is linked to the achievement of certain impact performance. So of course, a startup company, especially because we invest in early stages, a startup company might pivot, you know, throughout its life and become a traditional company. In that case, because we are not the only shareholder, we won't be rewarded by the success of the company in terms of environmental impact. So.
Yeah. Arati, do you agree? I mean, you're happy with,
I would say, first of all, I mean, in EIF, how we see it, we see it in quite similar manner. With regard to our fund managers, we are taking their policies and we evaluate the fact that they take into consideration ESG factors, sustainability factors in their investment decisions. And also we are passing down all the obligations that are related to ESG. We ask our fund managers to pass them down contractually. So KPIs, and also they have to report on that so that we can track to which extent these obligations are complied with.
Thank you. More questions, please. Yes, Ian, right at the front here.
Thank you. Following on from that previous question around the need for sustainability professionals, absolutely, I totally agree, but we just can't rely on sustainability professionals. We need everybody in business, I guess, at whatever level, CEO level, right down, finance, to understand sustainability. They don't have to go in and get a degree in it, they just need to really understand it if we're going to take forward. So I guess it's more probably just a follow-on for Peter. I mean, I get what you're saying, but you started at the beginning of your 5 minute talking about getting economists to understand the science. So I guess I was interested in, are you actually, instead of running a course on sustainability and attracting people into that, how are you embedding that in a cross-disciplinarian across the different parts of the university that you're involved in? So how are you teaching all of the other bits of academia about sustainability rather than getting them to come into your course? Because follows on from previous discussion around entrepreneurship, how do we educate entrepreneurs around this theme as well?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, and it's a challenging issue. How do you balance the depth and versus the breadth? This is always the issue when you start talking about interdisciplinarity. And then you have to sort of think about it from an undergraduate perspective and then a graduate perspective. So the grad students that are coming in typically come in with a major in business, or they could have had a major in economics, or they could have been coming in from a science perspective. And then they come in and we have to sort of cater and customize the depth at which we go into each of these areas in this new master's degree, and to sort of figure out or meet them where they are, in other words. So it is a very tricky thing to balance, but we're finding that over the first two cohorts of students that we've graduated, about 50 to 60 students in each of these first two graduating classes, almost 100% of them have gotten jobs in the first 3 months. And everything from sustainable jet fuel, working for companies, to actually being sustainability officers in corporations, to working for, say, environmental NGOs, where they also need a business background when they go into those fields. At the undergraduate level, what I like to say is nobody is immune from environment. And so we are trying to penetrate the entire university where we are building educational offerings, whether it's single courses, or it's a minor, or it's a major, or it's a full-on degree. And so they are all available to those students. Can't force them into these classes. Georgetown happens to have an in-depth, and I would say overly commitment to core curriculums. So we have a lot of core classes students have to take. The other thing, going back to your first question about the executives, we are actually scheming on an executive education around a lot of these sorts of topics. So executives of companies could come in and take a intensive weekend session around environment and sustainability type topics and why it matters and what they can do from the top down. It's also really important. And it's not like we're just the only ones doing this, by the way. There are other universities around the world that are thinking about these sorts of topics and thinking about this next way.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, Georgetown is a very good university, nice Ivy League, etc. But I mean, America has a lot of universities, some extremely good, some not so good. But I mean, how common is your course? I mean, the idea.
So it's interesting. If you look in the past, 10 years, 15 years, the U.S. has had schools of natural resources, like Yale School of Forestry. Michigan had the School of Natural Resources. Most of these educational offerings were based on extractive industries. How do we go ahead and farm trees because we need paper towels and toilet paper? Yeah. They saw the writing on the wall. The Yale School of Forestry saw this years ago, and they changed, not that long ago, and changed from the Yale School School of Forestry to the Yale School for the Environment. Columbia just announced a climate school, and so they have a school focused on climate. Stanford just got a $1.3 billion donation to create the School for Sustainability. This is just happening. This is just in the last few years. Some of these are new. It's rare that there are new schools. Ours will be a new school, but others are actually just transitioning. There are existing programs. Can you hear me? There are existing schools and programs where they see the writing on the wall, basically, and they're moving in a different direction and retooling as much as they possibly can, because everyone sees we've got to retool to meet the emerging jobs that are going to be out there, that are already out there, that we can't fill.
Also, Cambridge University also has a department that is dedicated to advising.
We're talking about the real Cambridge now.
Cambridge University, England.
Yeah, good man.
Which I went to visit a month ago on this, and because I feel it's important to have. Even though England's decided to leave Europe, it may come back, but it's still, the environment is global, and they see that obviously, and so I think that these processes are working in many different places. Georgetown University is a wonderful campus. It's quite a tight campus, and so the ethos and everybody talking to each other, even if you don't go to a specific class, you will get a lot from just the osmosis. And I just, one of the thing I wanted to say is that a good old friend of mine who sadly passed away a few years ago used to say something to me always. He was Greek, and he'd say, "Εγώ τα λέω, μα ποιος μ' ακούει?" I say this, but who's listening? And I'd like to thank The Economist for putting on this conference, because it is a way of listening. The Economist is probably one of the most read magazines around the world, and these things are very important. And that's why I wanted to get these gentlemen and lady here on this panel.
Well, you've done a terrific job, actually.
To help you see how you can educate and work and make money in this environment that we live in, and hopefully we can help others, and specifically these groups are also working in Greece, and that for me is very important.
Any final question, because we've amazingly made up time. I think there is one, but I can't.
There's one over there.
Oh, there, yes. And the microphone is on its way, racing with the speed of Usain Bolt. There we go.
Thank you very much, Professor Michael Skoulos. I have the UNESCO Chair for Sustainable Development Management Education in the Mediterranean, and I wanted just to add a small piece in the puzzle. ESG and ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, go hand in hand, as you quite rightly said. I just wanted to share with you some experience from the country. Education for sustainable development is something that we teach for some years at graduate and postgraduate level. And I can tell you that they have difficulties in finding work as educators. On the other hand, in order to enhance the multi and interdisciplinarity among the different sectors, as you said, we have introduced in Greece, and is the first country, as far as I know, the sustainability charter of the universities. All rectors have signed this, and we have this in all our universities. In some cases, we have sustainability committees in the universities, or they have merged the environment committees with sustainable development committees. Still, this is not the prevailing tendency in the different universities. They don't find easily people who wish to follow postgraduate courses, because there is no yet demand in the jobs. in the enterprises. So my question after that is, have you made this analysis? Have you consulted this experience in the country and in the Mediterranean? I have forgotten to say that here we have the Secretariat of the Mediterranean Committee of Education for Sustainable Development for the entire Mediterranean. And in this committee we have UNESCO, UNEP, UNEC, the Union for the Mediterranean, and the League of Arab States. So it is not something hidden. It is something quite alive.
Thank you very much. We are, amazingly, only 3 minutes over time. So I'm going to leave the last word to Prince Pavlos. Because you were deprived of 1 minute right at the beginning, so you have a minute now.
Again, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming here. And really, my passion that is growing is really how can we help the youth find their goals in the sustainable world that they're growing into. And I just found that working with the European Investment Fund, who I have found exceptional managers in these fields, is one way of doing that. And hopefully the youth that grows up can go and learn from these investors and then from the companies that they invest in. And obviously we start at an educational level, which I have a very close relationship to. Georgetown, obviously there are others, but in our mind we are the most important. But I believe in what we can do, and I am so encouraged in how in Greece this is actually a very key issue, and how we have an investor that is very key. One of his key subjects is investing in the Greek market, and a university that is focusing and not just coming to Greece, but actually getting Greek students to work with students that are coming from the university, getting the Greek universities to work with us. So this is it's a global issue that we can all work together. So I thank you for making the effort to come here and express yourself, and thank you for listening.
All of it. Thank you very much indeed. It's a great panel. And it's very comforting to know that our future belongs actually to the young. So, we have hope. Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Want to get in front of the...
No.
Get in front of the...
Yeah, here we go. As long as you don't fall over there, because I'm not sure about our insurance. Thank you. Thank you very much, Francis. It's really good.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Pierre. That's great. Julie Messi, thank you. Areti, thank you very much. Thank you. A terrific panel. Thank you very much. And now it is a real pleasure to hand over to Andreas Papandreou, who is going to have, I think, the honor, and it's definitely not a burden, the honor of sustainability and public health, the way forward. Andreas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Let me just, before I invite our distinguished speakers in a moment to the floor here, I would like to make a brief announcement. We are presently with us right now is Joseph Stiglitz, who will be speaking shortly, who has a Nobel in economics and has had a huge impact on economics. Today, we just found out that Daron Acemoglu, who was with us earlier, has just been awarded the Nobel for economics, along with his... along with his two co-authors, James Robinson and Simon Johnson. And we'll have the opportunity to congratulate him in person right after this session. So stay with us. We're going to have a great session, and then we'll also have a chance to thank him in person. So let me immediately invite to the floor Irini Agapidaki, who is alternate Minister of Health in Greece, and Alexandra Pali, President of the Board of CSR Hellas. The topic is sustainability and public health, the way forward, and we'll be continuing in Greek this time. Okay, thank you very much. Please go ahead. The floor is yours.
The floor is yours.
Bear talking Greek, so I will start by ευχαριστώ όλους και όλες για την
Thank you very much for the invitation today. It is very important the fact that on the agenda, sustainability has a core importance, because unless we have global health, it doesn't exist. And I say so because before the pandemic, we are used to considering health at a local level, national, in our case European, not beyond that. However, what happens in a country outside Greece may impact us directly. And I believe this is true for all countries globally. And for this reason, the effort of the International Health Organization is extremely important, meaning raise the awareness globally on public health issues so that we broaden our strategies and our actions on those topics. In our framework concerning the ministry itself, we focus on three axes relevant to sustainability. First of all, the change of the ecosystem, which impacts and generates new menaces and threats for the public health, meaning mosquitoes that recently in September we had an enormous issue due to floods, and again we have prolonged periods of droughts and other diseases relevant to food, together with the pollution, the air pollution, create a totally different environment. So we need to take action. And this is why we have shaped a strategy with the ministry which goes beyond prevention tests that most of you, of course, might be aware of in breast cancer and other different diseases. And for now we have the first prevention and detection system for chronic diseases, and we have an integrated system in place in order to promote public health while protecting it. Speaking about protection, well, there we have the dimension of sustainability. Well, we know that most systems do not cannot be applied preventively. So to have sustainability in health policy, what can we do in order to deal with long-term challenges, and if you wish, you may connect it with climatic phenomenon that are in place eventually? Well, I would say that after the pandemic, there is no excuse for any country. We need to be reactive and not proactive. The global healthcare community has described as disease X the COVID pandemic. In other words, we should have been well prepared for that pandemic. We know how the variables relevant to the climate change impact on health, and now we have in place a framework that can protect us in a way that we have a healthy soil, good quality of water, so that there's no negative impact on human health, while it intervenes preventively, and it is put in place in two ways. The model in the country changes, the overall model. We already have been implemented a number of actions relevant to the protection of public health care, and above all, a combination of primary health care with public health care. This is the best practice globally nowadays, and this is what we strive to put in place. In a case studies, we have verified the latter, as our primary concern there was to organize very quickly an extended medical surveillance network for the diseases that are communicated via mosquitoes. We knew that due to this phenomenon there would be a threat in the Valley of Thessaly, and for this, thanks to the latter, we didn't have an increased rate of incidents. And leptospirosis, another disease which appears with flu symptoms initially, which could remain undetected by our doctors. So we had a special training for them in order for them to detect them in the very early stage, after having tested water, different locations, which wasn't an easy thing to implement in Greece, have a multidisciplinary coordination in order to come up with an effective outcome. This was the case in Thessaly. And beyond all those, as we've learned the pandemic lesson, we have an enormous investment applying an RRF fund to build a response center in order for us to deal with micro outbreaks wherever in the country, monitor them in field and avoid propagation. In this reason, by having this kind of approach without remaining at a clinical level, at an environmental level as well, including an environmental dimension as well, while getting prepared, getting ready for the next pandemic, I believe that we are sufficiently safe and we are heading towards the correct dimension in terms of population protection. Thank you. This is very encouraging. Mrs. Pali, could you please discuss the topic as an introduction, and then I'll get back with questions. I would like to thank you for being here today representing the CSR network, the network of big enterprises, those listed in Athens Stock Exchange, both big and small ones, in operation for the past 20 years. The enterprises have been helping a lot in relation to all the topics presented by Mr. Agapidaki. We are supporting sustainability, and we do that thanks to the reporting in place in relation to the compliance and thus sustainability being strictly connected with public health care. One of the 17th such goals is number 3, well-being and peace in the world. And I fully agree with Mrs. Agapidaki that COVID has changed several things. Many enterprises invested in vaccines. Many enterprises have given money to help the national healthcare system to get upgraded, because funds are extremely important at that point, by providing masks or other equipment, necessary equipment. And this assistance is not over. We as a network, we have 180 members. At least 70 of them have helped and assisted in that sense, in that direction, which is still ongoing. Health is a very important asset. The climate change has created significant challenges for health, prolonged droughts, floods. We have been next to our people recently in the island of Tilos, the migration crisis, Mati, Ilia, different other places with problems. We are referring to ESG and as corporate responsibility, social corporate responsibility. Nothing can stand alone without the dimension of the environment. It's extremely important to have S, social, and G, governance. As for S and G, which is essentially the society, there most enterprises invest in internal projects relevant to the healthcare of mental health care of employees. Last week we had the Mental Health of Employees Day, where we had deployed projects on domestic violence, violence against women, and we work a lot with children as well. We have created several programs thanks to EU funds and partnerships between the public and private sector for children, migrant children, that we wish to have them integrated. And again, there are many different programs on the mental health care of athletes. Recently we had the Olympic Games, and at this point let me tell you that even at this level there are sponsors, enterprises that help and assist, because there are several issues in this field as well. Thank you very much. The initiative of social corporate responsibility and the ESG term included oftentimes focus on social and environmental impacts, how companies may connect more effectively sustainability with the results of public health care. Well, cooperation and partnerships. This is the word which describes everything. Otherwise, we can't move forward, and this is one of our goals. The enterprises are always there to assist. Speaking about ESG is a strategy, essentially a strategy of the enterprises. The social corporate responsibility was, how to put it, a benevolent action on the part of wealthy enterprises and wealthy people to help whenever there was a need by the society in the healthcare sector, wherever. However, now it is a strategy of all enterprises which is accountable to its stakeholders, the community, the society, and the enterprises that help and put in place social actions are well received by the people that have no positive impact footprint. They measure the footprint of water, the footprint of emissions. The carbon footprint may be very high. So there are actions to be implemented against all the latter. The 67% of the carbon footprint is connected with travels. How athletes can travel, what would be the alternatives? So beginning from the environmental dimension and those topics, we need to move forward. Of course, the climatic change is there. However, there are more other factors that intervene. So we need to build actions relevant to the environment and the society overall, building hospitals, and we know that enterprises construct hospitals or they've been given to the state, ambulances, helicopters, MRI devices, and there are many co-funded projects together with the ministry and some enterprises focusing on health. So I would propose that there's a committee in place to help the state consider things like an enterprise, to avoid having one hospital in Komotini, another one in Xanthi. There could be one, a bigger one, better equipped, and so on and so forth, in the way businessmen pull their forces together, or possibly a committee or for donors upon specific and transparent criteria, which is another additional goal, because there are donors from abroad. There are people, the Hellenic diaspora. They love Greece. The people that wish to contribute and help Greece. And of course, the healthcare sector is a very sensitive field. Excellent proposals. I don't know whether you wish to discuss them more. We did something similar relevant to the committee not only after Daniel. We used all those donations to invest there where we had needs. And again, this is an approach developed by the International Health Organization, which relates to sustainability and the healthcare systems, where we have three strategies helping us to have a more environmental friendly approach of the system itself. Digitization, first of all. Consider the tons of paper consumed all those years in the state. Well, we understand that we have destroyed lots of goods to get paper. The waste management, second topic, in order to have a more sustainable strategy in relation to our healthcare centers and hospitals. And third, last but not least, energy upgrading and sufficient in where we refurbish them, and energy upgrading, because we do not want them to be energy consuming and in many cases, unless we deliver something now combined with the climate change, well, I would say that the situation might go beyond control. And let me close with this. I can't think of a young person being aware of what we've been through, but still all young people need to believe in themselves, believe in the strength of the global community nowadays, that we got very powerful tools as AI. We may live in a global community. First of all, we need, of course, to take a joint action. Indeed, energy upgrading is a very sensitive topic and a very important initiative. While rationally speaking, all would be moving towards this direction to save funds and be more sustainable. Oftentimes there are problems in terms of funding. We become a bit myopic. We do not understand that once those projects are in place, we'll save more money in the future. So any help, any state support is of decisive importance. Let me ask you, climate crisis, which is considered an increasing threat for health, what measures are put in place by the Greek state to protect vulnerable groups of its impacts and promote equality in healthcare? Let me tell you, as I mentioned earlier, that climate change, climate crisis measures are there for farmers in Europe. However, this increases the costs overall. There are companies that protest against the strict standards, And speaking about European farmers, they are vulnerable. They are impacted by the climate change, the crisis, and the measures, the protection measures alike. Indeed, this is the case, as you've described it. It is a very hard equation. On the one hand, we need to take measures to give the opportunity to farmers, animal breeders, to have a future. The temporary political interest blocks the situation, and unless you take bold steps ahead, you can't protect the wealth of the country itself. Or the other way around, if you implement abrupt changes to protect the environment, we undermine the society, as you know. Citizens to be convinced they need a model that they can tolerate, that they can adjust to it. So we have a well-balanced approach. Is focusing on sustainable farming, promoting incentives, and fortunately RRF gives us the opportunity to help them financially speaking, and on the other hand we'll have a framework which didn't exist in terms of farming, in terms of fishery, in all relevant sectors, primary rural sectors. From the field to the self must be the slogan of all of us, so that we judge upon sustainability and consumption, what we buy, in other words. So the way the government strives to change old standards and apply a common standard for the healthcare and connect all the above, the way we live, farming, health, well-being, in a well-balanced, under a well-balanced framework as it exists, may enhance not only farming, but enhance sustainability as a whole. At some point, we need to come up with alternative solution, not just giving money whenever there is some kind of catastrophe, of calamity in place. I serve a government that looks ahead, not the immediate political interest, and we are working in that spirit in the healthcare sector as well. We have a long-term vision, and prevention is one such dimension. Well, those shall be bearing fruits, shall be giving fruits. I won't be there possibly, but at that point we'll be having better health indicators for vulnerable groups. We know that climatic change, climate crisis impacts impacts strongly the vulnerable household. By breaking this vice circle, we are not letting nobody behind. This is what we did in Thessaly with well-targeted interventions and measures. There where we have a block of floods for vulnerable groups, and there where the people had more problems compared to other areas, because climate change and climate crisis involves the clash of classes, between classes as well. At this point, apologies for not getting questions from the audience. We need to close. But let me put forward the final message. The connection between poverty, climatic change, and healthcare, and the fact that unless we support such vulnerable groups, a message given by Nobel Prize Acemoglu, well, we can't move forward, whom I'll immediately invite to the floor.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ και εγώ πολύ. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. So I'd like to invite now Nobel Prize winner Daron Acemoglu to the floor. John Andrews here.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Brilliant, well done. Fantastic.
Congratulations. I'd like to say I feel particularly proud. Several years ago, the Department of Economics gave an honorary doctorate to Daron Acemoglu, and he honored us with being a member of our university. So
it's very meaningful, and it's great. It's every time I come to Athens, there's something nice.
Daron, I have to tell you that Andreas last night, we were just chatting, and he said you were coming. And he said, I think maybe there'll be an announcement. He really did. So you weren't like Cassandra. You were like...
I managed
You
to
managed,
pull it off.
absolutely.
It's actually the second time, so it's amazing.
Wow.
It happened with Amartya Sen, where his first public appearance was at an event that we'd organized here in Greece, and he got the Nobel Prize then. So this is a really great privilege to have him.
It is amazing, and the fact that it happens in Athens, the birthplace of democracy, I've written about, so it's really meaningful. Thank you.
Maybe you could say just what you feel would be a key message that you like now. The lights have always been on you, by the way, but now it's going to be difficult to contact you for the next few years, perhaps.
Joe would know, but
Joe, that definitely knows. Yes. If there's some key message that you'd like to say.
Oh, sure. I would be delighted. Look, first of all, this is overwhelming. I'm absolutely honored, and the work was the prize was for my work on institutions. I think institutions matter even more today because we are at the cusp of so many difficult changes. AI, adaptation to AI, making jobs meaningful, reducing inequality, dealing with aging, dealing with climate change, and I think we need even more focus on institutional strength, making democracy both stronger and work for everybody. We actually had a really good conversation about that this morning, so I hope that it actually contributes to having broader conversations about these topics, because I think they are really the crucial ones for the world we are going to leave to our children and grandchildren.
I'm a full convert.
Thank you, Andreas.
Many congratulations.
Thank you.
Darren, one sort of mischievous question. Traditionally, when people get the call about their prize, they wonder whether it's a prank call. Did you realize immediately that it was serious?
Well, actually, before I got the call, I had a text message and an email from somebody on the committee saying, "What is your phone number?"
So you knew.
Email, so not text message, email. So I was easing into it.
Yeah. Oh, well done. Very well deserved. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really great.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Put in the middle here.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Really brilliant.
Thanks so much.
Really great.
Thanks for everybody here.
Thanks, Andres. And I guess now it's me again, is it?
Huh?
Yes. And, I think there's a saying in England that, you're waiting for a bus and nothing happens. You wait and you wait and you wait. And then finally a bus arrives. And it's not some one bus, it's another bus. Well, it's not some one Nobel laureate, Daron Acemoglu, but there's another Nobel laureate coming. Joe Stiglitz, please.
So good, Joe. Let me also just say that tomorrow my university, my Department of Economics, will also be giving an honorary degree to Joe Stiglitz, so the timing is really fantastic.
Joe Stiglitz, we met a long time ago, you will not remember this, in Paris, when I gave you a book prize on behalf, I think, EDF, for some book you'd written. You've written many books, and it was for the best economics book translated into French. So there you are, you see.
Yeah.
And,
there were a couple of them, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, it's great to see you. And your subject, keynote speech now, is the US presidential election and the global green agenda. And I think it was, I'm not sure whether Andreas referred to the coming election as the elephant in the room, but it kind of is an elephant in the room. So the floor is yours. Here or there, it's entirely up to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And it couldn't be more exciting to have Darren receive the prize. It's very well deserved. He could have gotten it for many other topics, many other contributions besides the one that they explicitly mentioned. So it is a very well-deserved prize. The subject that I'm talking about, the U.S. presidential election, is, as it was just mentioned, probably the most important issue in determining what happens over the coming years on the green agenda. So I can't tell you who's going to win. I can tell you who I hope will win. And I think I'm actually optimistic. I think there are some grounds for optimism, but I'm not going to go into that. What I am going to talk about are the major differences in policy, and by way of discussing that, bring up several issues, not only about U.S. policy, but also about European policy, green policies as well. The fact that it's a toss-up says a great deal about polarization in the United States and the role of identity politics. And the reason why I mention that is that even when Trump gets defeated, the polarization will be there. So the fight will be on, and Trump has had global impact, not only in giving voice to authoritarian figures, but also giving voice to those who are climate skeptics, who, like Trump, claim it's a hoax, people like Bolsonaro in Brazil. So this is not only, this has become a global issue. And unfortunately, U.S. leadership in this way has had very serious consequences. There are a broader set of issues that I'm sure most of you may be thinking about. Issues like, can the U.S. be relied on for Europe's defense, for support for human rights and democracy, to uphold the international rule of law, to advance multilateralism? My answer, even as an American, is you can't rely on America. And that has strong implications. You know, I've never been a big supporter of defense expenditures, but after the Russian invasion of Ukraine and seeing the way that the Republicans have prevaricated on that issue, I really do think it's important for Europe to step up and increase its military expenditure. But the particular issue on the table, of course, is climate change, and climate is a global issue and needs global cooperation. And with Trump being both a climate skeptic and against global cooperation, and doing everything he can to fragment the world, the consequences of a Trump election couldn't be greater. So let me try to distinguish some of the differences and how they might play out. One side, it should be obvious who that is, sees climate as an existential threat. It recognizes the urgency and wants to do everything possible. But here's a caveat: within certain perceived political constraints. For instance, the Biden administration has refused to settle what is called the children suit, a suit by 21 children against the Biden administration, saying that the failure to address climate has denied them of due process, it violates common law. There have been several suits in Europe that some of them have been successful. I happen to be an expert witness in this particular suit. It's gone up to the Supreme Court twice, been passed down. It's been going on for now through Obama, Trump, and now Biden's administration. Biden should have settled it, but he hasn't. Another great concern, and here Europe is imitating the United States or following it, are the tariffs against Chinese solar panels and EV. And the fact of the matter is that those tariffs are raising the cost of responding to climate change and therefore slowing the progress in fighting it. I do think it's important to develop long-run capacities, but as I'll comment, maybe if I have time, it can be done in ways that don't slow the responses to climate change today. So that's my brief view of the Biden and Harris will continue, I think, in that same strain. Very strong on climate, but not as strong as I would like. But on the other side, Trump has called climate change a hoax. He minimizes the role of humans in climate change, if it exists. He's in bed with the fossil fuel industry, and he would roll back the IRA and climate regulations. So, even as I criticize the Biden administration, the gap between the two couldn't be greater. As I said, climate change is a global issue. It needs a global solution, and that necessitates cooperation with multilateral institutions playing a critical role. And since World War II, U.S. has played a pivotal role in advancing multilateralism. That would continue under Harris, I believe. But Trump has consistently undermined global cooperation and multilateralism. And even more so when it comes to cooperation on climate, evidenced by, for instance, his exiting the Paris Agreement, and he said he would exit it once again if he gets reelected. But here again, let me criticize a little bit what Europe has done, and hopefully you will put pressure on your political leaders. Europe has not taken a strong stance on these issues as it should. They allow Trump's appointment to the World Bank, David Malpass, who was, remarkably appointed president of the World Bank and says he said he didn't believe in multilateralism. I mean, how could you do that? And Europe voted for him. You could understand why Trump would nominate somebody who doesn't believe in multilateralism, because he doesn't believe in it. But why Europe would vote for that beggars belief. And I hope it doesn't happen again. It was a costly, very costly failure of during the previous Trump administration. Another point that I've already raised very briefly is that both Europe and U.S. have put jobs over the green transition in the discussions of solar panels and EVs. They've claimed that they are unfairly subsidized. If that claim has any validity, we have an international framework for addressing that, which is the WTO. There are if you go to the WTO and they're bidding subsidies, you can impose countervailing duties. That's the rule of law. We just got a new Nobel Prize on the importance of institutions and the rule of law and how important that is for our society. And yet Europe and the United States have trampled on this aspect of the rule of law. Actually, when the evidence, some of it's been published, is pretty strong that the subsidies, if they exist, are minor and are the kind that you see all over Western countries, United States and Europe. And so this charge of large subsidies is probably unfair, at least today. It may have been in the past, but at least today. The reason China has some big advantages over the United States. It has a larger market, high levels of competition. It has availability of capital. They have a savings rate of 25, 30. In some years, it's been 40% or more. And they have high levels of skill, many more engineers. Most of our students in our engineering school are from China. So they have all these advantages, and they have a further advantage. They saw climate change coming and did something about it. They began industrial policies pushing climate change, telling people they had to focus on green, EVs and electric batteries. I was with the premier of China when he had a meeting with an American auto executive, and one of the big companies, and he said to him, if you don't make the transition to total green, to total electric vehicles within 5 years, you're going to be out of here. So they had the vision to see that you need green cars. Now, there was an obvious reason for that. They were dying from pollution. So it wasn't all worried about global issues. It was partly a demand from their citizens who were, anybody who visited Beijing 10 years ago knows what I'm talking about. Well, these restrictions are, as I said before, increasing the cost of the green transition and slowing the pace. But even taking all these criticisms into account, the fact of the matter is Trump will be worse. So he would be far more aggressive than Harris. He doesn't care about the green transition. He's focused on jobs, and he doesn't understand economics or the role of macroeconomics versus trade policy. It is not the responsibility of trade policy to create jobs. That's the responsibility of macroeconomic policy. I want to have a brief digression, if I have a few minutes to do that, on a somewhat technical topic, but one that is very important. Discussed widely in the United States, not gotten quite so much attention in Europe, and that's what's called the social cost of carbon. That's the number that is used by governments and should be used by the private sector in deciding whether it's worthwhile to make a green investment. And we call it a social cost of carbon because carbon puts a cost in all of our society that we will have to deal with. The extremes of weather, the disasters that are coming. And so we ought to incorporate that into everything that we do. And economists have worked hard to try to get a number on all of that, to summarize all of that into what is the cost of carbon and how much effort we should put in a dollar sense to avoid emissions. And under Obama, it was $43 a ton. Then, under Trump, it was lowered. Different parts of the government used different numbers, but it was somewhere between $7 and $35, much, much lower. One of the first things that Biden did when he took office was to issue an executive order saying we need to revisit this theme. And he came up with a substantially higher number, $51, but a number that is less than half of what it should be. So that's, again, a critique of Biden, and hopefully Harris will raise it. But the fact that I'm criticizing Biden doesn't take away from the fact that it's so much better than what Trump did. And let me tell you why that's so important, because if you use a very low cost of carbon, it's associated with almost doing nothing about climate change. Yeah. And the reason that those who think we shouldn't do, the reason that the number is so low is because they underestimate the damage, which, the evidence keeps coming on, the damage is larger. I was on the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that evaluates all this back in 1995, and the one mistake we made is we underestimated, even then, the magnitude and the pace of climate change, but even then it was clear we ought to do more. And the models that were used by Obama's team underestimated the damage. But another problem is that they undervalue future generations. If you don't care about the future, then go ahead and pollute. But any of us who care about the future, and there's strong philosophical arguments, you mentioned Amartya Sen, and Ken Arrow, who made very strong arguments why ethically it's indefensible not to care about the future. Well, the point of what I'm making is that using this low social cost of carbon implies no action, no concern about future generations. Hopefully, the Harris administration will move towards a significantly higher social cost of carbon. Trump would be a big step backwards. He would again lower the social cost of carbon, and he's promised to repeal the IRA, the the Inflation Reduction Act. It's a peculiar name. They had to call it that to get it through the U.S. Congress, and that shows the polarization in the country. But it contained very strong green policies. And it was very poorly designed, I have to admit that, but, and that means it gave very little bang for the buck in terms of the green transition, but it was an awful lot of bucks. Originally, it was intended to be in the office of the OMB, both the OMB and the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, estimated that the cost would be about $350 billion of subsidies. The current estimates are that it will be between $1 trillion and $1.5 trillion. It was tax credits that were unlimited, and people have taken advantage of them, which is a good thing, because it means that the legislation actually worked and is accelerating the green transition, but it also means that it's become a big target for Trump, and he has said he will repeal it. Well, one of the reasons that I've emphasized global cooperation is, as I say, climate change is a global issue. And the biggest polluter in the world now is not the United States, but China. Not per capita, but in total. And that means that
Και αυτό σημαίνει
change has to get Chinese cooperation. And that's why in thinking about climate policy, one has to see that in the context of the bigger geopolitical scene that is going on. I think Trump would strongly undermine that cooperation. I mean, he's announced tariffs of 100% or more against China. It's very clear it would be very, very aggressive. My worry is that Harris might find it difficult getting that cooperation unless there's a little bit of a pivot. The current administration has taken the stance that we can be aggressive with China in multiple arenas, but cooperate in others. So we can be aggressive in other aspects of trade policy, but when it comes to climate, we all work together. Many, including many of the people I know in China, are skeptical. And the more recent actions of China suggest that that skepticism may be well-deserved. I don't know if you've been following it, but in response to U.S. restrictions on the export of chips, China has imposed restrictions on the exports of gallium and germanium, which are essential metals that are used for the production of lots of things, including your iPhone, and some of the green technologies also require these. And those are seen as a response to U.S. restrictions on exports of chips. And that would have, if that continues, very severe consequences. Still, no matter how much I might criticize Harris, Harris will impose lower tariffs, will act less aggressively, and I think there are much better chances of cooperations. Now, I've given a pretty dismal picture. Disaster if Trump gets elected, and some problems.
The latest Economist calls it the Trumpification of America, regardless of who wins.
Yeah, but there is a very big difference. There is a very big difference. But now I want to give you some reasons for optimism, or not. Things may not be as dismal as I've just suggested. And there are 3 or 4 of those. First of all, the states like California and New York are setting standards that affect the entire nation. You know, California is 20% of the U.S., would be the 5th largest country in the world, and they are totally committed to the green transition. They proposed saying you can't sell internal combustion engines after 2035, I think, and they have a strong policy supported by their citizens. I mean, this is strong support. Trump tried during his previous administration to take away California's discretion in setting its own regulations, but he failed. Now, he will try again. And California is working hard to immunize itself against this. There's a very good article on this in the New York Times, I think just yesterday, on California's attempt to protect itself to Trump-proof.
So we have Trumpification on the one hand and Trump vaccine on the other hand.
Yes. And I should have mentioned that the IRA was designed in part in the way it was to Trump-proof it. That is to say, it was deliberate that the benefits would go to a lot of red states that would make it more difficult for them to repeal it. Secondly, global companies realize that they have to comply with global standards. And, you know, you've talked to a lot of global companies operating in the United States, American companies. They can't have two standards. And they know that if they behave badly in the US, they will be castigated in Europe. Thirdly, a large fraction of citizens, and especially young people, are concerned about climate change and are adapting their behavior. When we have a dinner for our students, we have to be vegetarian and give a vegan option because there's been really a shift in diet.
We at the conference take note.
And the large political climate impacts are inducing even political leaders in the red states to respond. And so I think there are reasons for hope over the longer run.
I certainly hope so.
Let me turn now to one particular, you know, I mentioned the IRA and how it is really pushing the green transition in the United States with global impacts. But there's some other global consequences of the IRA that are not quite so positive. The IRA violated the basic principles of the rule-based order and the rules of the WTO. It was described as a deliberate attempt by itself as a deliberate attempt to grab green jobs. The magnitude is so large that it can't be matched even by Europe. Europe's senior officials in Europe have complained to me and say, you know, say they just can't match the $1.5 trillion. It's partly because of your political structure. You have the money, or you could get the money, but your institutional arrangements make it very difficult. In many parts of the world, particularly in developing countries and emerging markets, they're asking the question of whether there ever was a rules-based international order. The rules were largely written by the United States, and then when the rules proved inconvenient for the United States, the US ignored them.
Yeah.
And so if you have a rule that's only obeyed when it's convenient for you, is it a rules-based order? At the same time, US and Europe insisted that developing countries and emerging markets obey the rules, even when it resulted in unnecessary hospitalizations and deaths during the pandemic, as the West put drug company profits over their lives. What I'm talking about is the developing countries, led by South Africa and India, asked for a intellectual property waiver so that they could produce the vaccines and other pandemic-related products. And the WTO, especially because of Germany, Switzerland, and UK, said no. And this has left a scar because thousands of people died as a result. And this helps explain the lack of support for the West in Ukraine, and it will make global cooperation in other arenas more difficult. U.S. has actually said explicitly, Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor, has said that it won't obey WTO rules and won't allow appointment of appellate judges under their reforms until it undertakes reforms that are to its liking. So basically, the WTO is no longer effective when it comes to the United States, but is effective when it's in the interest of the United States. So I think restoring a rules-based order and a more level playing field and advancing is absolutely essential for advancing a green agenda. The law of the jungle will be bad for the world, and especially for developing countries and emerging markets, and will be bad for the green agenda. And that leads me to the final set of points. Given the abuses of the past, the old-style big trade agreements are unlikely. The development round was a failure. So this is where I think we might be able to go with the Harris administration, not with the Trump one, which are limited green agreements focusing on green trade and on greening trade, and entailing helping developing countries and emerging markets with finance and technology to rebalance the level playing field that's been so distorted by the IRA. Let me finally make one point, that cooperation is better than Europe's current approach. I don't know if, how many followed some of the things that Europe has been doing, but they've issued what's called the Deforestation Directive, that's saying you can't import agricultural goods on newly deforested lands, and they've proposing to impose taxes on goods that are made in a dirty way. Both of those, at one level, seem perfectly good ideas, but the way that they've been adopted unilaterally and the way that they're being implemented are viewed as unfair to developing countries. There's costly compliance. Even the US has said it can't comply with the Deforestation Directive. And so have some of the, a couple of the European countries have as well. And what's unfortunate about the way it's been done, it's likely to have no effect on climate change. It will just change patterns of trade with non-compliant agricultural goods sold to other countries. And of course, it's being challenged in the WTO. Well, the point about this is that under Trump, there's likely to be a strong reaction from the United States with large counter tariffs. And so these measures are likely to generate a green trade war. Just the opposite of what one wants, which is global cooperation. So finally, let me conclude with just a few summary and review points. Climate change is a global issue that can only be addressed globally. That will entail global cooperation. Trump will undermine such cooperation, but Harris will have trouble restoring American leadership and helping establish more effective multilateralism. Europe needs to be careful not to follow the United States, like in trying to have industrial policies that unlevel the playing field.
But we're going to, unfortunately.
What?
But sadly, I think that is the route we're taking.
Yeah. Well, that's right. You should try to curb it.
Well, the economists will try. We want BYD vehicles to come into Europe and so on, but you know, tariffs will go up. Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
We're getting into the discussion, so let me just finish the last point. Advancing the green agenda will require industrial policies. I agree with that. But the advanced countries need to provide finance and transfer technology, and that's a better strategy for engendering global cooperation, and global cooperation is absolutely necessary if we're going to advance the green agenda globally.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you for such a sobering but sadly realistic appraisal of where we're at coming up to November 5, and who knows how many days after it's going to go on, but I mean...
3 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you made the point about California, which, but, I mean, California, of course, was operating before. I mean, how is the new makeup of the Supreme Court? Does that have any effect on the balance between the states and what Trump might or might not do if he wins?
Well, obviously, the Supreme Court is critical. Typically, Republican Supreme Courts are very sympathetic to state rights.
Yeah.
But this Supreme Court doesn't believe in the rule of law.
Yes.
Even though they're supposed to be enforcing it, and everything is seen through a political lens.
Yeah.
So, to the extent that they follow their natural ideological presuppositions, which is allowing states more freedom.
Yeah.
The Clean Air Act, which is what is defined, gives them the right to delegate this to the state. But they may rule differently, just like they ruled that the Clean Air Act doesn't cover CO2 emissions, in a remarkable decision that says that it's called the major doctrines, major issue doctrine, which says that if it's something important, you can't delegate it because Congress would have explicitly dealt with it. Well, the whole point of delegation is that you don't know what the future is going to bring, but there are some real bad things out there. We all agree that we don't want pollution.
Yeah.
And let experts decide what are the elements of pollution. That's why you delegate it. And CO2 is a bad pollutant.
Yeah.
So I think everybody, legal experts outside the Supreme Court and the extreme Republicans say that that was a major flaw, a major mistaken decision. But again, this Supreme Court, everything is seen through political lens.
Andreas.
Yes, if I may, in many respects, much of your academic work could probably be captured by the phrase that perfect is the enemy of the good. And I'm wondering, both in terms of the IRA, whether that is, in some sense, the best that the Biden administration could do under the conditions that it existed, and whether we might have similar problems in terms of the EU with the backlash now, in terms of finding solutions that might not be best, but might be the best we can given those conditions. And also link it to the democracy issue, because China had the advantage of a kind of much more centralized system in terms of decisions being taken to the center and being able to plan, whereas democratic institutions, if we follow what Acemoglu and Amartya and you have said, are ultimately key to long-term success. The timeline for climate change is short. Can we get there?
So I think the IRA was the best that they could do and I supported the IRA.
Yeah.
But as an academic, one of our jobs is to push government to try to do better. And that's what civil society, the press, needs to be engaged in. So, if you had asked me, would I support the IRA? It was clear. Some American economists said no, and my view was they were making the mistake of the perfect being the enemy of the good. So, but what I've been trying to outline is where we ought to be going.
Yeah.
And normally you say we have time. There's a kind of urgency here, and that worries me. I think the consequence is we will have to play catch up, and that will be costly. Yeah. And it will be more costly. You could say, well, it's just money.
And so you do have the privilege of printing your own money. That's
but so we will have to spend more. And I think because we've delayed and our economy will be weaker. Yeah. We'll have more damage. We're spending more money having to repair the damage in Florida rather than making creative investments that would make our economy stronger. I mean, you know, you can see how much money we're going to have to spend in repair in Florida, and what it's doing to our insurance industry. So it's very clear how damaging the delay is.
Yeah.
Now, the final thing is, I think a really interesting question. Can democracies have vision that are comparable to those of somebody like China or Korea during its phase? I think the answer is yes. There have been economies that have had vision. Some of the Nordic countries have had vision, and they've gotten ahead of the game. So it's not impossible. The problem in the United States, we saw the issue. You know, Al Gore had the vision. He was vice president of the United States, and he brought it to the attention. You know, he made a global campaign out of it. So you can have vision. The problem with democracies, and it's the problem in autocracies, because there's no really autocrat. You know, there are always pressures, is special interests. The coal industry doesn't want the green transition. Just a little story. When I was member and chair of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Clinton, we saw this coming. I was on the IPCC, and we were, one of the things that we wanted to do is to bring this more to people's attention is to construct a green GDP that would reflect in our measurement of how well we were doing what was happening to the environmental degradation and resource depletion. And we got the Department of Commerce to go, you know, which is a bureaucracy, to go along with us, and they were working on this. And then Congress got wind of this. And the congressman from the coal stake said, if you continue doing this, we're going to defund you totally. We knew then we were doing something important.
Yes.
But we couldn't do it.
Sadly, Joe and Andreas, I think time is against us.
Again.
And I think that's been tremendous. Thank you very, very much. And I mean, all these things go back in time as well, because you think that the WTO, I mean, I think it was the Republicans who refused to allow the judges to go through to the arbitration panels in the WTO, which really the U.S. one. So it basically paralyzed the WTO.
Exactly, but unfortunately, it has continued under Democratic administrations, and that goes to the point you meant, the Trumpization. The one side makes the other side scared to take the appropriate action, and that is really part of the dilemma that we're in.
Well, we admire your courage. You see, you're a great voice for liberal economics and civilization in the world. So thank you very, very much indeed, Andreas.
Just one thing I want to say. I don't know if you'll fit, but you're all invited tomorrow to the University of Athens, National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, which at 7 o'clock will honor Professor Joseph Stiglitz with an honorary degree. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. That was terrific. Thank you. Thanks, Andreas. And unfortunately, time presses, and it's our final session of today, and it's on green investments in Southeast Europe, the Balkans, etc., and the Mediterranean. UK and Europe. Chris Barton, His Majesty. It's like, you know, it's funny. The Queen was there for so long. It's quite hard suddenly to say His Majesty, King Charles. Anyway, His Majesty's Trade Commissioner for Europe, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. And then Rania Ekaterini, who is from the Hellenic Federation of Enterprises, and then the role of the financial services sector, Yannis Tsakiris and Angeliki Kaligiannaki. Oh, you know, there's always going to be one Greek name that really makes me stumble, so forgive me. Chris. And if everybody else could come up as well, that would be very good. So Rania Ekaterini and Ioannis Tsakiris and Angeliki Kaligiannaki. I think I got it. Sure, wherever. That's great, yeah. I hope I haven't screwed up too many names. Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Well, a very good afternoon to see you all. My name's Chris Barton. I'm His Majesty's Trade Commissioner for Europe, so it's my privilege and pleasure to encourage a thriving trade and investment relationship between the UK and the rest of Europe. And that, of course, matters at any stage for economic growth and creating jobs and improving living standards. It matters for our security and our partnership. But particularly, thinking of today's session, it matters for our sustainability. I want to share three quick thoughts for you today. And the first is to underline the tremendous opportunities there are for Greek and other European companies and businesses in investing in the low-carbon transition within the UK. You'll know, I hope, that the UK has for long been very committed to the low-carbon transition. We were the first major economy to sign up to binding carbon emissions, zero carbon emissions by 2050. We've got the most ambitious targets for 2030 and for 2035. We've seen emissions reduced by nearly 50% since 1990. And over just the last, since 2010, we've had over £300 billion invested in our low-carbon economy. So we've always been very convinced of the need to address low carbon. But we had in July a new government, a new Labour government that was elected, and that is a government that is very pro-growth, it is pro-business, it is pro-trade, and it is particularly pro the sustainability and driving forward progress. And in their first 100 days, everyone seems very keen on first 100 days these days, in the first 100 days, some really important milestones in the UK. We've had the closure of the last UK coal-fired power station in the UK. Coal is no longer part of the UK's energy mix. We've accelerated the timescale for phasing out petrol and diesel cars. We've got ambitions to double our onshore wind capacity by 2030, and we've lifted a ban on onshore wind in England. We want to triple solar, and within those 100 days, we've seen 3 major solar power plants agreed, and going forward, which will provide electricity for about 400,000 homes. And we want to quadruple our offshore wind capacity. We're very pleased that the first, second and third largest offshore wind farms in the world are in UK waters. We're second only to China in terms of that offshore wind deployment, but we want to see a major increase. And we're setting up a new institution, Great British Energy, to provide that stimulus to further encourage a low-carbon transition in wind and more generally. And even a couple of weeks ago, £22 billion worth of funding announced for carbon capture, use and storage. So we've got extremely ambitious plans for energy, for nuclear, for energy storage, for heat pumps, for electric vehicles, and proposals to address key enablers such as planning and grid. So that's all very nice, but why does it matter to you? Well, I think it matters to you because there are huge investment opportunities for Greek and wider European businesses in that transition. Today, in London, we are hosting an investment summit, and we've got over 300 global CEOs coming in to the UK to look at the investment opportunities that we have. We've announced £24 billion of new investments in that low-carbon transition. And we are consulting on an industrial strategy. Don't worry, it is, thinking of the last panel session, a level playing field industrial strategy. We're not trying to pick winners, but we are looking to identify key sectors such as the sustainability low-carbon energy sector, which are areas of particular strength to the UK. And even tonight here, I'm pleased I'm going to be meeting some major Greek investors in that transition, including Metlen and Viohalco. So the key message from this is there are tremendous opportunities in the UK. We think about £100 billion worth of investment we need in that low-carbon transition between now and 2030. We're setting the environment to make that highly attractive. Great that there are Greek companies already participating, and we would love to see more. Message one. Message two is that the UK is delighted to play a major role in the green transition in Greece as well. We welcome the high ambitions that we see in this country in terms of reducing emissions by over 40% by 1990. Your extraordinary increase in renewable energy, which we notice, and including in solar and in offshore wind. I believe you have a target of to have 79% of electricity from renewable sources by 2030. That is very exciting from the UK perspective. What you're doing on energy efficiency, ambitions on electric vehicles. We also very much applaud the link that you're making with energy security. And of course, Greece is a very important NATO ally for us. And we agree with you that the low carbon transition matters not just for saving the planet, important that is, but also for our security and prosperity. And I'm delighted that there are quite a range of UK companies already participating in this transition. For example, we have BP Lightsource in solar. They've recently announced 800 megawatts of solar projects in West Macedonia and in central Greece. We have Next Energy Capital in solar and energy storage, and Macquarie Green Investment Group in a range of hydrogen and energy storage and renewable projects, SSE Renewables. And there is a whole lot of other British companies who are interested in investing and partnering with Greek companies here. And we have venture capital firms such as Susten who are looking for partners. So there are lots of British companies already engaged in this, and we really want to do it together. I think the watchword we're going to address the low carbon transition is we need to do everything, and we need to do it together. We need that whole broad range of portfolio of different low carbon solutions, and we need to do it with UK and Greece, UK and Europe, UK and the wider world together. So final point, having said that there are tremendous opportunities for Greek companies in the UK, a lot of very exciting opportunities for British companies here, say that we want to help companies on both sides. So if you are a Greek company that is interested in buying from the UK, learning from the UK, investing in the UK in the low carbon transition. If you're a British company that is interested in investing in low carbon transition here, exporting here. If you're a policymaker wanting to sort of share expertise with us. We absolutely want to do that. We have a small but brilliant team in the British Embassy. We have a fabulous ambassador in the front. Please make sure that you connect with us, because we want to help make sure that the UK and Greece, UK and the EU, UK and Europe work together to make the most of these tremendous opportunities in the low-carbon transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris. In a spirit of patriotism, I gave you at least an extra 2 minutes. Yeah.
Very kind.
And now, Rania Katerina, please.
I'm very happy to listen to your speech about collaborations, because I work with Macquarie and the big solar energy, so that's a great example. Obviously, the green transition and how you maintain the competitiveness of the European industry, it's a $1 billion, hundreds of $billion question, and I suppose it has many moving parts and stakeholder interests, which is not only a European matter but a global issue. Because I speak faster in Greek, I think I'll switch to Greek. And then you can.
You speak faster in Greek.
I speak faster in Greek.
My
so,
God,
yeah,
I won't be able to keep up. I'll do my best.
Yes, you'll do your best.
I would like to mention the green transition part and what this means for the industry and investments. In Greece, we have an industry that proved some stamina throughout crisis. It was adapted and it is on the rise. Challenges today do not differ from the European ones, either related to the supply chain and the cost of materials, or related to the cost of energy, or finding out personnel. But we must understand that the role of the industry is very important, and continuously we need investment. This is what we're going to discuss later on with Mr. Tsakiris from the EIB, because the industry, first of all, is the first employer. 400,000 vacancies, posts, that is 30% on average. The remuneration is higher compared to other sectors in Greece. The employers' fees and the contribution of employers in the industry is 26 times more than the remaining Greece. Industry contributes by 14% to the GDP and is one of the sectors, one of the main sectors that, along with defense and the real estate, contribute in investments, let aside fixed assets investments. But today our issue is that we are having a green transition, like Draghi is mentioned in his report, is quite challenging. First, digital acceleration, because without that, productivity in industry remains quite low in Greece and in Europe, in the EU. Then green transition and the cost of energy that undoubtedly is higher compared to the remaining world. And then the important raw material that defines pretty much to what extent Europe has the raw material, the equipment, the products to support green transition, and obviously funding needed. We see in China, for instance, we discussed that before, and in the US, how big capitals have been leveraged in order to support, through funding tools or through subsidies or through tax reliefs, important investments that are made. And broadly speaking, markets, capital markets, and debt markets are pretty helpful towards investors to this end. Now, moving on a step forward, talking about how Greece adapted to European directives on green transition. Quite recently, we saw ESSEC, that is the National Plan on Energy and the Environment, which includes, or rather foresees, that up to 2030 investments of 95 billion euros. It is a huge figure if we take that into account. What does this mean? It means that the productivity mixture is 80-20 in favor of RES. This is something very positive, of course. At the same time, it presupposes huge investment in the industry so that the industry can be electrified. Problems are too many. Electrification of the industry. Imagine that there are big industries today relying on natural gas and other sources of fossil fuel to be electrified. What would be the cost of energy? Draghi is saying that the cost of energy in Europe vis-à-vis the US and China is 2 or 3 times bigger. The cost of natural gas 4 or 5 times bigger. If we predict and we make estimations, we did it in SEV, in our federation, we did it through Business Europe, it shows that this cost of electric energy for the European industry will remain significantly higher vis-à-vis the remaining competitive countries for the next 5 to 10 years. This is the first part. Second part. the objective for CO2 emissions. In Europe, until now, there is a mechanism of free allocation CO2 emissions, like a mechanism of counterbalancing the indirect emissions, but mechanisms imposed by the EU, like CBAM, to create a safety net for foreign products that don't have the same footprint, that is, metal products or steel products and other products produced in worse rules of environmental compliance. This mechanism is trying to protect the import by putting a levy in Europe, but at the same time it abolishes the free rights to the European industry. So imagine in quite some years' time to have abolished all the rights of CO2, which means that industries should have invested in no CO2 emissions any further, but automatically this creates an added cost for consumers in Europe because it sets a premium due to the added cost from the abolishment of the fossil fuel sector, and it creates a competition if foreign products of different carbon footprint get into Europe. The most important of all, though, is that we cannot talk about green transition. We can either talk about our own balance if this 95 billion cannot be produced in Europe and in Greece. Imagine huge investments throughout the spectrum of the economy, either the households or the industry, transport, etc., if all these investments presuppose imports from foreign countries. The shortage of trade deficit for Greece and Europe will be very difficult to tackle automatically. This will lead to many problems. It is something to foresee. We need to see what investments will be needed so that in reality, we as Greece and as Europe, we can be able to produce a significant part of technology products and services that will be needed for green transition. God save the interpreter from the booth.
And I just stopped because I saw the watch, the time.
And thank you very much for the translators. They do a fantastic job. And now, Angeliki, Ioannis Tsakaristis.
Thank you. I have to deliver a speech.
Yeah, sure. Are you going to put a burden on the translator, or?
No. I will put a burden on the translator.
Speak the language of Shakespeare.
I see that the British ambassador is here, so at least he, with his Greek language skill, he will understand a lot.
Thank you.
So,
Your Excellencies, I'm pretty happy to be among you today representing the EIB. And first of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers of this brilliant event, and I would like to thank them for the invitation. Now, when it comes to the previous speakers, I would like to argue that Mrs. Ekaterinari talked about the difficulties and the thorny issues. In my brief presentation, I will focus on the critical matter of green investments, aiming at the remodeling of a sustainable growth pattern, both for Greece and more especially for the broader region of the Mediterranean and obviously for Europe. The issue is not just related to financial growth, but also to the guarantee of a sustainable future for the generations to come. Climate change is one of the biggest challenges in our era, and we in EIB, obviously, not only have we taken that into account, but for quite some years, we have been working in that. The impact of that can be seen throughout the world, especially in the Mediterranean, a region which is vulnerable to different phenomena like droughts, wildfires, the rise of the sea level. And in this framework, green investment is not just a choice, but it is an urgency. EIB is at the forefront of this big effort. Priority number one for us is the enhancement of our role as a bank of the EU on climate. Climate bank, in other words. This is how we name ourselves. Our objective is to support investments, promoting sustainable growth, decreasing CO2 emissions, and at the same time they do protect the environment. Already, a big part of our funding is channeled towards projects that enhance green economy, coming from RES, of course, and we are also paying attention to the upgrade of infrastructure. In Greece, investment in areas, wind, solar and hydroelectric forms of energy, in our view, is the key for the transition into a greener and more sustainable economy. Projects like the large-scale wind parks and solar infrastructure, not only do they decrease emissions, but they create new labor posts by upgrading the local economy. And our country has many iconic projects to demonstrate through the assistance of the European Investment Bank, like the milestone we signed with the operator of energy, ADMIE, to interlink the islands of South Cyclades with the continental grid. Apart from the EIB, this was also financed by the RRF. Then, the funding at the level of 400 million euros that we agreed some months ago with Metlen company on the upgrade of PV parks and storage projects. The recent agreement of 490 million euros with DEPA to create PV parks in Thessaly and central Greece. And last but not least, the agreement with Sunlight to finance production of innovative batteries in the ultra-modern plant in Xanthi. Yet, sustainability is not limited in energy alone. We support projects enhancing sustainable agriculture, the support of biodiversity and the management of water resources. In the Mediterranean, for instance, climate change affects greatly water resources. Our country, like Spain, are one of the two countries in South Europe that are mostly impacted. So the rational management of water and their reuse is of paramount importance for the area. EIB does support projects that focus on these challenges. Recently, we agreed to dispose 80 million euros for the upgrade of the irrigating network in Plati area in Crete that will strengthen the hectares there against drought phenomena. Yet no effort can be successful without partnerships. In EIB, we do not work alone. We partner with different governments, the local actors and the private sector to guarantee that our investments will be of paramount importance for investments in the society. In this framework of the InvestEU initiative, we do support sustainability projects, giving added incentives for private endeavors in green sectors. Ladies and gentlemen, green transition is not just of paramount importance. It's not just a necessity, but a huge opportunity for Europe. Greece and the wider region of the Mediterranean are in a privileged area and could become the leaders of such an effort to use the comparative advantages of the region, sun, wind and sea, through targeted investments, but also through the proper strategic priorities map that we have created in the EIB. We can guarantee that growth will be based on two interlinked sectors, sustainability and innovation. Together, hand in hand, we can build a more sustainable future, not just for Greece and the Mediterranean, but also for the whole Europe. Thank you so much for your attention.
Finally, last but certainly not least, Angeliki Kaliginaki.
Great. Thank you, John. Dear fellow panelists, it's a great honor to be here with you today as the head of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, head in Greece. And I'm particularly honored to discuss the role of the financial sector in green investments. Sustainability has been at the heart of EBRD mission since its inception. We have been at the forefront of sustainable development, while we have pioneering innovative structures to respond to climate mitigation, adaptation and resilience. Since 2022, all our projects are aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement, while we aspire to become a majority green bank by 2025. We are on good track on achieving these. Already in 2023, 50% of our financing was directed to green investments. Our activity in Greece to support the energy transition of the economy has been diverse in terms of financing, policy dialogue, as well as advisory support. We have been the largest institutional investor in debt capital markets. We have financed the debut green Eurobond by Metlen. We have financed the very first series of sustainability-linked bonds by PPC. We have also supported PPC with equity, which was a game changer for the company towards this low-carbon pathway as it's moving with the closure of the lignite plants. In terms of renewable energy, we have financed the largest at the time photovoltaic park in Kozani of Hellenic, the 220 megawatt, while we have been very active in green buildings and sustainable real estate development, working hand in hand with our partner Demand and Lambda Development on urban regeneration projects. In terms of policy dialogue, we have participated in the development of Greek capital markets framework, including green policy matters, as well as in the regulatory framework for the offshore wind capacity generation. The Greek PPP preparation facility run by EBRD is a novel framework set up together with the Greek government to prepare PPPs on vital social and infrastructure sectors. So right now we are preparing 13 PPPs on behalf of the Greek government with a total value of 1.7 billion total value of investments in critical areas like e-mobility, green ferries, waste and water management. Of course, we realize that a lot of progress has been made. The Greek economy has made considerable progress. However, challenges remain, and in particular, investment barriers, bureaucratic hurdles, lengthy permitting processes, as well as a legacy of a high-emitting economy. At the same time, public acceptance, we discussed this before, public acceptance is also crucial, as we need to address job losses in affected communities while preserving biodiversity. So all these matters require careful navigation. And indicatively, based on EBRD's latest Life in Transition report, despite the fact that 3/4 of the responders in EBRD's countries of operations recognize the reality of climate change, only 40% of them, 40, are willing to contribute and pay higher taxes to respond to climate change. Investment gap in the country remains significant. Of course, the return to investment grade in 2023 helps a lot and helps mobilize more and new private capital. However, gross fixed capital formation remains at 14% of GDP, well below the 27% that Draghi has identified in his report as the sweet spot that will allow economies to reach the global sustainability targets as well as regain competitiveness at EU level. So the role of financial sector is crucial in responding in all these challenges, and in particular in developing innovative products such as well-functioning green capital markets, PPPs, helping streamline processes, working hand in hand with government institutions, as well as finance large infrastructure projects. So we make sure that we have a sustainable grid with incorporated smart solutions, etc. Draghi's report is more like a roadmap for transformation. So I see tools at the hands of financial sector as being very powerful, like the RRF. The RRF is a roadmap for transformation, as 40% of the 18 billion, which is the loan component, will be redirected to respond to climate change. Other instruments like the InvestEU guarantees or the Just Transition Fund guarantees available can help us respond and create diversified job offerings in the affected communities. EBRD remains committed to finance those initiatives. Our MDBs, together with our partners EIB, we play a crucial role in scaling up private sector financing by deploying public funds and make sure that we help the economy reach its sustainability targets. So either this is direct financing, utilizing guarantees, or other risk-sharing mechanisms. I look forward to the discussion ahead.
Thank you very much. Now, miraculously, we are just 1 minute over time. But let's just spend, say, 4 minutes extra. We can, they're a very patient audience there. Rania, I mean, Joe Stiglitz talked about Al Gore, and he waved the banner about climate change and the environmental catastrophe that was awaiting us years ago, 1990s. Why is it taking Greece so long to sort of wake up to this? You still have a couple of lignite mines. I mean, you know, it's extraordinary, really, isn't it? Sorry, I'm being provocative, but...
Actually, as I said before, the National Plan for Energy and Climate basically αφήνει σιγά σιγά το φυσικό...
Leaves natural gas.
Next year or the year after abolishes as well. So the new product mix is going to be 80% renewables, 20%.
But I mean, you had sun all the time. You had wind all the time. You had warnings from not just Al Gore, but plenty of other people, the IPCC. Why did it take so long?
It doesn't take so long.
And several different governments. So it's not...
It doesn't take so long, but it's very important to also consider the kind of pricing we have these days, both in terms of Greece, but also in the regional market and vis-a-vis the central market. So we witness different electricity prices during the day. So when we have, you know, photovoltaic, and again I'm referring to the competitive energy cost for the industry, plus for the enterprises and for the consumers at the end of the day. So we do witness that we have very low prices because of the solar, right, during the day. But usually in the afternoon, from 6 to 9 o'clock, we have hikes in the region of even, you know, 1,000 euros per megawatt hour. What does this mean? First of all, that, you know, the European systems with the European electricity systems do not somehow coordinate, or there is not a regulatory mechanism that, you know, creates a level playing field for all the European countries. You have substantially different prices between the European countries, and substantially different prices between, you know, Central Europe and South Europe. And we've witnessed that really this summer, that, you know, South Europe had spikes, because South Europe had to sort of export electricity to Ukraine, whereas Central Europe did not have to do that. So one is, yes, photovoltaic, but, you know, even photovoltaic, in my personal view, is becoming more and more challenging, because they're more dependent on the merchant, they have a merchant risk, which is related to the wholesale market prices. So if you have very low market price during the day, how the banks, I'm not sure if there are any risk guarantees, how the banks will further, you know, finance further photovoltaics in the Greek market if we don't sort out the problem. That's one thing. The second thing is security of supply, because still you see that we have photovoltaics, right? But, you know, the lignite units may not operate, but somehow you may have them in cold reserve, or the power plants or the gas power plants going forward, or even, you know, plants in the islands that, you know, through the connections, they should become obsolete. You will still have them in cold reserve just for the sake of that. So securing electricity of supply as well has a cost.
Yeah.
We move to renewables, but still, you know, having all the fossil fuels just on the corner, just about there's a major crisis somewhere, it has another cost for the consumer.
Okay, I believe you.
Yes. So Greece does have a very ambitious plan.
Good.
But still, how the regional markets work, and how you create a level playing field for everyone within the European single market, I think it remains a big issue.
Thank you. Chris, what exactly is Great British Energy?
So Great British Energy, the idea of this is a new organisation that is going to bring together some of the existing support that we give through government for low carbon energy, but also it's got £8 billion and more money, which it will use to leverage some private sector investment, support some R&D, also, which is importantly on the acceptability point, it's got some money it's going to be giving to local governments to help them with projects which get local support for low carbon solutions.
I mean, I'm asking you a provocative question, obviously, because all the press are saying, you know, it's a slogan, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sure that, you know, as a diplomat, you're paid to actually answer these questions.
Yes.
But, so doing very well. But if you go back to government policy, you had a goal of 2030 under, I think, Boris Johnson to try and get rid of internal combustion engine sales. That's been delayed. I mean, there is a real problem, it seems to me, for all democracies in trying to meet targets that are set by politicians who kind of know that they may not be there when the targets are due to be met. And so it's easy to overpromise, and therefore it's quite easy to underdeliver. Is that the problem that Britain is suffering now?
I want to go back in history a little bit of this. I looked after our renewable energy policy since 2007 to 10 in the UK. And I would say when I got the job, it was not a compliment to be doing renewable energy. Was seen as sort of the joke bit of energy, and grown-ups did oil and gas and coal. And then during that time, we made, then as members of the EU, agreed to the target for 2020 to have 20% of renewable energy from renewables. And we did do quite a lot of thinking in government, is this achievable, is this realistic, and so forth. And it was interesting, the fact when it was decided, we went to Prime Ministers at the time, Blair and then Brown, saying, are you really serious? You absolutely want us to go for this? And they said, yes. And from that moment, it absolutely transformed the way that we did renewable energy in the UK. I don't think we got completely to the targets that we were aiming for, but we were light years ahead of where we would have been had we not. So, I mean, I think there is a sort of pull factor, but it is important that they've got to be plausible, but stretching.
Final question, because really it's 15:38 now. For the EIB and the EBRD, the Draghi report, it points out how difficult the situation is at the moment, how far behind we are in terms of what's happening in America. Do you find the Draghi report is a damning indictment on what the EU has been able to do over the last few years, or do you think it's something which actually can give us hope?
Well, I think the Draghi report was a wake-up call. I mean, everybody knows that we have to do something to increase our competitiveness, and that's the case. And here I have to say that it's very important to understand that competitiveness, cohesion, and energy security are very much linked together. Yeah. So, and helping one will also benefit the others. So I think that Draghi report is a wake-up call. It points very precisely where Europe should focus, because, again, as a collective, I would say, collective instrument, European Commission, the Parliament, etc., they tend to defocus, so we have to focus again on certain things. And indeed, we are not, I believe, lagging back behind. And let me tell you just one example, which you mentioned about Greece. Yeah. And the lignite plants. There is a European plan to abolish the lignite energy. Greece was one of the countries that committed to close by far earlier its plants, and the plan is on track. Yeah. And for that purpose, there was also a pan-European delignitization envelope has been put in place, so that societies and economies that will have an issue when closing down the lignite plants to be benefited. So we are on track. We're also on track when it comes to technology. We are on track when it comes to national policies, the SEC, the national climate policies, that they are converging into Europe. We are okay. We just need to work, I think, and to row a bit more quicker and more with the tempo, so that to achieve a greater speed.
Thank you. Angeliki, you have the final word.
Great, thank you. And I totally agree with Yannis. The Draghi report was a wake-up call, but it's also going to be a reference point for the future. And actually what it says is that we need to regain competitiveness at EU level, and the way to do it is by utilizing tools available like the RRF. We might need another RRF, and we all know that how well Greece is doing on that front. We have already we have already received 48% of of what is allocated to Greece. And basically, this is all I mean, we saw how RRF worked so well in the hands of the financial sector. And why? Because the government decided to redirect the funds through commercial banks or IFIs. So together with the Draghi report and what we have achieved in the past, and keeping in mind while RRF worked so well, we can move in the future and finance the very big ticket that green transition requires from all of us collectively working together.
Excellent. We have hope at last.
However, the Draghi report refers to 100 billion per year through private and public finances, which is a huge amount, and requires another political, different kind of political.
If we were Americans, we could simply print more dollars.
Things would have been much easier. But 800 billion, for us to decide, I think it's going to be
I'd take your point, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean, remember, Draghi is the man who saved the euro.
It's true.
Which, good for his, I mean, it's a very good report, I think.
But public finance is equally important apart from
it's pretty tricky, I agree.
The private one, so yeah.
Thank you very much. Excellent panel. Thank you very much, the audience. I wish I could have asked you for questions, but sadly, we're over time. I know that you're getting hungry, and there is lunch outside. And we must make sure we don't